Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the Critical Breakdown. Wanted to make sure you're fully aware. We're on Facebook. We got our website, The Critical Breakdown, and make sure you're leaving ratings and reviews for us on iTunes or whatever podcatcher you're listening on. It helps us out a lot. It's what keeps us going. It's how we know that we're doing the right stuff for you. And we'll read them on the air if they're good, if they're funny. So bring your A game, people. Got another good episode coming up here that you're really gonna like about the movie. And hey, thanks for listening. And here's Max. Hello and welcome to The Critical Breakdown, the podcast where we start at the bottom of Rotten Tomatoes and work our way to 100% fresh. I'm Scott.
And I'm Max. And today we're doing things a little bit different. We're taking a break from the Rotten Tomatoes count up. Because we're not really counting down, we're counting up.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about our top 5 alien contact / invasion films.
A classic and firmly set genre. But it is kind of a follow-up to our Signs episode. We both enjoyed Signs to varying degrees. And when I went through our list of the movies we've watched for the podcast, we've actually watched a ton of alien contact movies. Sorry, I don't know if you just heard that.
No.
I just silenced my phone. I'll start this point over again real quick. We've watched a ton of first alien contact movies. We've watched Mac and Me. We watched Mac and Me. That's the first contact. That creepy family of aliens. We watched Battlefield Earth, which isn't really the first contact, but it's a contact.
It's an alien invasion movie in a sense. So
yeah. Jupiter Ascending.
Mm-hmm.
Space Jam.
Yeah, the Monstars.
That's right. Man of Steel.
Yeah.
One alien. Well, no, I guess more.
There's more.
The villains in there.
A couple show up.
A couple get in there. And then we get to our freshies. Contact. To an extent, Starship Troopers. I don't think the aliens ever really get to Earth, but they attack Earth. So
that's true. Contact is made.
You can get a half point for that. And then, of course, Signs. So those are, some good, most bad, but...
it's a range.
It's a range. That goes from our 0% to our highest percentage. So what a perfect time to do a top 5 list. Max, so what defines an alien contact movie? Versus just any sci-fi movie that goes into space.
So one of the things we kind of looked for was it's grounded on Earth.
Yeah.
It's a human story. Aliens can be a major character, but it's a human story dealing with the concept of contact. Now that could be peaceful contact or it could be violent contact. That part doesn't matter. But the main thing is that it's a story about humans interacting with aliens on Earth and kind of how both a person responds to it as well as a society responds to it.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes a really good alien contact movie, because it is such a foreign concept in this modern world of ours. To just, I guess the last group of people who really got that foreign invader feel would be Native Americans.
Well, yeah, just any kind of indigenous peoples were probably the last human group to deal with it. But I mean, it is a story that humanity has dealt with over time.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Sometimes we are the invaders, sometimes we're the invaded. It just depends on, your culture and all that. But we have plenty of records historically of what happens. And so most of our alien invasion stories are based on that.
Yep, for sure. And I think we'll jump into our lists here, but there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. You can go with that all-out war way. You can go with a much smaller scale, 1 or 2 aliens coming in. You can go with a more peaceful scale. My favorites are the ones that bring humanity into it, but I'll start with my number 5, which is a little different from all those. It's Galaxy Quest, which is only really barely an alien invasion movie, because the only alien invasion is when oh my gosh, I'm not going to remember the name of the alien race there, but they come to Earth for the Galaxy Quest convention to visit Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver and everyone, and then they take them away. But it's just a really good movie, and it ages really well. I watched it like 2 months ago, and it's still very funny. I watched it like shortly after Alan Rickman died.
Yeah, I always tell people that's my third or fourth favorite Star Trek movie.
And I mean, it's very clearly a satire of Star Trek.
Oh yeah, it's more Star Trek than half the Star Trek movies out there, like authenticity wise. So
sure. And I've never watched Star Trek, but I still love it.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's the sign of a good film. I mean, it does both in a sense, but it satires as well as stands on its own. So
yeah, and then I love Justin Long's character and like the people at the con.
Guy is probably my favorite character.
Yeah, Guy Fleegman's amazing. That's Sam Rockwell's character. Yeah. I always heard rumors that they were going to make either a sequel or a TV series or something, but I hope those talks are complete and not happening anymore now that Alan Rickman couldn't be in it, because he's also one of the highlights.
Unfortunately for you, there is still a Galaxy Quest TV show in the making from Amazon with Paul Scheer in the writer's seat.
Paul Scheer. Oh, he's
The League, Human Giant. Yeah. He's
got kind of that goofy face, right?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a way to describe him.
It's not the nicest thing I could say about him, but
it's the weirdest thing to go to, but it's not inaccurate.
Well, he's a funny guy, so maybe he'll handle it well. But the original's so good, I hope it doesn't. Tarnish its legacy. There's really great lines in here, as well as just really good, like, goofing on kind of tropey sci-fi scenes.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of good stuff. There's, I mean, as much as it's about, contacting these different alien groups, it's also about the ridiculousness of science fiction TV. Yeah. So there's like the aliens. If you haven't seen Galaxy Quest, they build the ship to the exact specifications that it is in the show and from like manuals they find. And so there's a room with like flaming axes flying through it because that was in one episode. And it's like a joke in it that they have to run through it. And they're Sigourney Weaver's like, whoever wrote this episode is stupid.
And what about I'm trying to remember 100% now, but don't they have to like stop the reactor or something, and they think they get it, but it waits until 1 second to stop?
Yeah
It's just so funny. And then of course Alan Rickman's Sir Alexander Dane is in costume all the time. And then he has his saying, by Grabthar's hammer, by the sons of Warvan, you shall be avenged. So, it's really good, and it considering it's like a comedy and a satire, it actually pays off really well in the end because it's just a well-made movie. So that's why it's on my list.
That's fair, man.
Yeah.
So I have
what's your number 5?
Well, I'll mention my number 5 in just a second. I'm just going to say I have a couple runners up that did not make my list. And I want to just run through these real quick. We don't have to spend many time on them. But my first one right off the bat is Star Trek First Contact. So I thought it was funny that you had Galaxy Quest in here because this is a Star Trek movie with the Next Generation cast, but literally about the first contact that humanity made with aliens. It's good. It's one of the
good ones.
It's probably the best standalone Next Generation film that didn't involve William Shatner. So just throwing that in there. Then next up we had Fire in the Sky, which is kind of like it's like a biopic / horror film based off somebody's account of getting abducted. I watched it as a kid. I think it's not Robert Patrick. It's the guy who played the T-1000 in Terminator 2.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I don't remember that. I don't remember his name.
I want to say he's in it, and it's just the story of this guy who gets abducted, basically. I think it is Robert Patrick. But the abduction scene gave me nightmares as a child, and it's kind of amazing.
When was the last time you watched it, you think?
Probably about 10 years ago, and it still freaked me out. It's not like a perfect film by any means, so it didn't make my top 5, but it's a good watch, especially if you want like a creepy alien abduction film. Then I had Predator on here.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I didn't even realize that Predator took place on Earth.
Yes, it takes place in a jungle, and it's like a bunch of old troops come. Not even old, but kind of like a bunch of special ops troops come in, like a ragtag group, and try to take him out, and he's just hunting them.
Doesn't Predators with Adrian Brody take place on a different planet?
I think so. I think that's where the Predators...
Like a spaceship or something.
I think that's where the Predators pick people up and drop them off on like a game planet and then hunt them down.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I never saw that one, but I do love the first Predator film. It's pure 80s all around. And then my last runner-up was Mars Attacks.
Oh, Mars Attacks is pretty funny.
Yeah, it's Tim Burton. It's star-studded. Everyone's in it from that year, basically. It's good. It's fun. It manages to be both a spoof of classic science fiction as well as more modern science fiction of the era. So it pulls both together. And you've heard us on the podcast all the time mention our thoughts on Tim Burton, but for us to just sit here and sing its praises, hey, it's a funny movie. Like, it's not even crossing our mind that it's a Tim Burton movie. It's just a funny movie. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and that's a very divisive movie, though. A lot of people really don't like Mars Attacks.
And I think it's right in the middle, too. I think we passed it in the 50s.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, but no, it's I love it just because I watched it as a kid and it made me laugh. And there's a lot of stuff in there that still makes me laugh. And like we still have 2 out of 3 branches of the government, and that ain't bad. There's just so many classic lines. It's a good one, but like I said, it spoofs a lot of modern day films. And that leads me to my number 5, which is Independence Day, a film you notoriously hate.
Yeah, I'll let you take the lead here because my thoughts are on record about how much I dislike it. Yeah,
and Independence Day is definitely a guilty pleasure. I'm not sure if that was in my top 5 guilty pleasures. It might have been, but so it's a crossover for me. It's a cheesy movie. It hits all the emotional buttons it needs to if you're willing to let it, where you just get wrapped up in the story. You have your father looking for redemption. You have like a president struggling to keep his country together. You have the troop who's like, both trying to manage being a good dad, a good boyfriend, and a good soldier. It's just all these like strings that tie together. You have like a mother who's just trying to get her sons to safety. So like the human element is there. Yeah. And then you have this whole alien event showing up, and it does, whether or not you like the film, I would argue no matter what, it does have the electrifying feeling we've mentioned before in these kind of disaster-y type of films.
And I think part of it is just how much you like disaster films.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying they do that build up for like the first hour where it builds into all the ships going into position and then blasting everything. Yeah. There's like this whole build up where everyone's like excited. People are like making signs to go out and meet the aliens. And it's this whole like atmosphere there. And then it just goes haywire. And, it has that big cheesy finish with them finding an Apple compatible computer on a spaceship. And, you can argue, and I've seen people argue this, that that's not technically a plot hole or a loophole or anything because we got our computer technology from them from Area 51. So all of our computer technology is derivative of theirs.
I think that's an airtight thought there.
Technically, since they mention in the movie they get the first ship they found from Area 51 or from Roswell. Okay. It's from Roswell, not Area 51. But the ship they have that they fly up is from a Roswell crash. So I'm saying like they could. I've seen people make that argument. I'm not making the argument, but I've seen people make that argument that the reason the computer can link into it is because that's where our technology is derived from. Getting lost in the weeds there. It's a fun film. It has a lot of great lines in it. The Bill Pullman speech is classic. And I believe Randy Quaid is full-on batshit insane now, but his character, who was also batshit insane, he just really nails it home. He flies his plane into the ship, destroying it, and he yelled the whole time he's been talking about being abducted, and then he's like, hello, boys, you missed me, I'm back, and then like destroys them. So... like I said, it's a fun film. It's cheesy. It's ridiculous, but I just love it, man. If it's on TV, it always passes my TBS test. So,
yeah, it's a very beloved film. I'm definitely in the minority of people who don't even find it very fun. It's what was it? Was it exactly 60% or was it 59? I can't remember.
It's probably close there.
but it's one of those movies that like a lot of people love, but it might not necessarily be widely considered a great movie.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree on that.
I think it deserves its place. I'm glad it was on your list because it deserves its mention.
Yeah.
I do think we want to throw in the caveat real quick that of those movies we mentioned that we've already reviewed on the podcast, we didn't put those in our lists. Like Signs would probably be my number one, and we didn't put it in here.
And Contact was on my list till we decided to not include previous entries. So
yeah, and Contact would have been close on mine as well, I think, because I did like Contact quite a bit. But why don't you give us your number 4, Max?
Oh, you want me to go straight into number 4?
Go straight into it.
All right. Well, my number 4 is a classic film, and it won't be the only one from this director on the list, I can safely say, but Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Ooh, that's, of course, directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yes, it is a Spielberg film. It is, I believe, directed and written by Spielberg, but I can't recall off the top of my head.
It was actually also this year re-released in theaters very briefly.
It was.
With very little fanfare. And I mean, I don't watch TV much or like live TV, so I don't see many commercials. But the only reason I knew that it was even back in theaters is because I was looking at like the prices of the Blu-ray and I saw that they were doing a re-release and it made me look into it and saw that it was in theaters, which I thought was a little weird.
Yeah, and I had a buddy actually mention to me that it was in theaters, and unfortunately I was like way booked up that entire week, and I was like cursing myself for not going to see it on the big screen. And I think it was I
think it was like the 40th anniversary or something.
Yeah, because it's a 77.
Yeah, so that'll be 40th anniversary.
Yes, I mean, this was released the same year as Star Wars, which is kind of crazy because...
That is kind of crazy.
It feels like older, but I think that's because Star Wars feels like timeless.
I think you're right.
But at the same time, I mean, the last time I watched this, it still held up pretty good a couple years ago. It has Richard Dreyfuss and Terry Garr are probably, the top 2 people you would recognize from the film. It's a pretty...
Yeah, so I've never seen it. So can you give us like the 10,000 foot flyover? Like what is the kind of the nut of the story?
Yeah, basically the main character, who I believe his name is Roy, he encounters like a UFO basically, I think on his way home from work or something. And he just becomes obsessed with it. And like he's like hearing music and sounds, and he's like, it's all he's thinking about, and he like I said, he becomes super obsessive over it, and it's like destroying his family basically. And so it just drives him to this point where he goes in search of like what he's getting drawn to, and a couple other like another group of people also get drawn to the same thing basically. And it all culminates with alien contact being made.
It's definitely focused on that human element from the sounds of things.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like kind of similar to Signs in a sense, where you see the human aspect as a guy who is almost like pushing his family to the brink, but in the other direction, where in Signs it's a guy who's not believing, and this is a guy who's like I said, kind of getting too obsessed with it. So
over believing.
Yeah. And it's a good film. You should definitely check it out. So
it's been on my list, which is now I think over 200 films. But
yeah, I think if you like just spur the moment and bought it on Blu-ray, like you wouldn't be disappointed. You'd be fine with it. So
maybe I'll do just that. Maybe I'll do just that.
Just
but
have
it is
it around.
a beloved movie. So I get that.
And I think if you watch it now, you could probably see a lot of influence on filmmakers like M. Night Shyamalan and like J.J. Abrams. You could definitely see where, while this is a big Spielberg film, it's not as beloved as, some of his other works out there. And, but if you go and see it, you see more of, some subtleties in it and stuff that people picked up on. So
sure,
I definitely think it's worth watching. I don't want to go into too much of it so that you could still see it, but let me just say it's just a good film, man.
Yeah, I'll go into it with as fresh eyes as I can. You know what? I'm going to watch it very soon. I'll report back to not only you, Max, but our beloved listeners.
Yeah, do it. What's your number 4?
Well, I think my number 4 is on your list too, but my number 4 is District 9.
That's my number 3.
Number 3, sneaky. District 9 is a Neil Blomkamp special, which we've talked at good length about Blomkamp after we reviewed Chappie, which is a horrific film.
He still stands by it, man.
Which I respect to an extent, but I also read that he compared Chappie to Blade Runner, and it really ticked me off. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking today about the film that put him on the map, District 9, which I think is a little unique in the alien invasion film in that it's kind of, I don't remember specifically because it's probably been since theaters that I saw it, but it's a couple of years at least after the landing of the aliens, right?
It does open with the aliens making contact. It shows like archival news footage with Blomkamp that he likes doing that a lot, just using like archival footage to world build, and it works really well in District 9.
Yeah, for sure. I remember really liking that. It puts you right into that space, but it's unique in that it's the first movie that kind of touches on aliens seemingly trying to assimilate with human culture.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's definitely, in my eyes, and I think it's kind of undeniably an allegory for like apartheid.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, obviously taking place in South Africa, it's a little on the nose, but it's just a really good story. Like even around that really cool world that's built, there's a really good micro story in there about, what's the character's name?
Are you talking about Christopher Johnson?
Wickus.
Or Vicus.
Yeah, Vicus. How he's turning into one of the aliens, and you kind of just find out a lot about motivations and stuff. It's just a neat story.
Yeah.
I think it does a good job of showing how fear can have an impact on people. Fear and power together can be like a really dangerous combination. Why was it your number 3?
It's my number 3 because, first of all, right off the bat, I saw this, and I mentioned this in Chappie episode, but I saw it as a short film about 5 years before the movie came out, I want to say, maybe like 3 years. And so I just loved the short film. It was a lot cheaper, but it was kind of the same concept where it's like, hey, these aliens got stuck here. They're trying to assimilate. It's messed up. Like there's a lot of stuff going on here that's messed up. But then, you know, the full film takes that whole concept and pushes it further. It's just kind of amazing because first, right off the bat, every time you watch an alien contact film or an alien invasion film, they go to Los Angeles, they go to New York, they go to Cape Canaveral, they go to, you know, London. They don't go to South Africa. And
you go to a landmark place that could kind of root people to it just with those sweeping shots.
And I mean, yeah, that's because like it's, you know, usually Western films getting made and stuff. And you can argue this is Western film because, you know, South Africa is very European influence now. But at the same time, it says, you know, the ship came to Johannesburg of all places, which doesn't make sense, you know, compared to movies. And then the ship is just broken down. It's not like they're invading. It's like they got stuck. Yeah. And then when it's just there for like a month, finally they fly troops in to try and like get onto the ship and see what's going on. And I remember just like when they finally cut through the ship and get inside, it's literally just refugees, like poor, sickly, bug-like refugees. And it was just such a different take on aliens where like they show up and they're more advanced than us. These show up and most of them are, you know, imagine, I don't know, the poorest people that survived Katrina just showing up on a different planet, you know, just like think of like just any disaster, you know, like right now I have family in Puerto Rico and, you know, they're suffering. Imagine if those people are just dropped in the middle of nowhere in a different planet. Like it's just insane to think about. So like you said, they try to assimilate them as refugees. They give them names like Christopher Johnson, which is one of the main characters in the movie. And he's just one of the prawn aliens. And he's honestly better than the human main character, like morals wise. He's just a father trying to protect his kid. And so it just takes all these like tropes. And I mean, the human is turning into an alien the whole time while getting hunted by humans. And the alien, who is honestly more moral and ethical than any of the humans in the film, is trying to get his son to the ship so that they can escape and like come back for his people, basically. It's a good way of looking at humanity by flipping all the roles that you usually would have in a movie.
No, I mean, that's exactly right. And it's filmed with that documentary style, which makes it really neat.
Yeah. And it cuts between both like narrative and documentary, which is cool too.
Yeah, for sure. It was Neil Blomkamp's like big break. It was It was Charlton Copley's first feature-length film. And obviously they're both pretty talented. So it's cool to see them take off from it. But there's always been talks about a sequel. And I don't know if it's ever been materialized in any way, or if it's always just people want more of it.
Yeah.
But
I feel the time has passed on it, but
I agree.
It would just feel like one of those sequels for the sake of a sequel now.
It would feel a little disingenuous if they did it now. But it would be cool to see something with that world again, because like you said, there's a lot of really cool factors playing into it. I would love to see a crossover with Chappie just for Hugh Jackman's character.
Didn't he die?
You know what? I was just trying to think about that, and it's the first time I've thought about Chappie since we recorded that episode, and it made me really sad, so I think we should move on.
All right, what's next?
Well, so if District 9 was your number 3, why don't we do my number 3?
Okay.
It's another classic. It's E.T., the Extraterrestrial.
Which I'm just going to point out, you stole my number 1.
Stole your number 1. Well, I don't want to steal your thunder, so why don't you start talking E.T. and then I'll jump in with my thoughts since it's your number 1.
E.T., the Extraterrestrial, is another Spielberg film. It is a classic from 1982.
Yep.
And it's one of those movies, man, where I feel like it might not be everyone's like favorite movie, but growing up, if you watch this, you were like, that's a movie, you know, like that's a film. Like this is amazing. And it's very emotional. It takes you through a ridiculous story. It's influencing media still today. And it's just, you know, like this kind of lightning in a bottle moment is how I see it. It's just, I don't know. It's amazing. Every time I watch it, I'm just more amazed by it. And it takes me to like a happy spot. It's just fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. Everyone knows the plot of E.T. An alien shows up, gets stuck, and a kid helps him while he helps the kid. And then the alien, you know, gets to go home afterwards. But it's like all the things that are amazing in Stranger Things season 1 happened because of E.T.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. You talk about the influence it's had. Look at Stranger Things, which is such a phenomenon, and it is so much so a chip off the E.T. block. I mean, sure, Eleven's not an alien, but
it's like if, you know, a Stephen King story and E.T. had a child, it's Stranger Things.
Yeah.
So,
and what's in my mind, what's amazing about E.T. is even beyond the sci-fi elements of it. It's just a really good like coming of age and like buddy movie, you know.
Yeah.
So there's people out there who won't watch sci-fi just because they can't get into it, but E.T. is not the kind of movie where they'd be like, "Oh, it's sci-fi, I won't watch it."
Yeah.
It is science fiction, but it's just a really good movie, and there's so much talent. I mean, John Williams on the score, Steven Spielberg directing, obviously.
I mean, you could say it's no Mac and Me, but it's a pretty damn good movie.
No, and I mean, if you want your sign of just how good E.T. is, look at Mac and Me, a movie that literally tries to do everything E.T. did, but it's just not the perfect storm like E.T. was, and it becomes the worst thing of all time.
Yeah, this has, you know, it has all the kids in it. You have Drew Barrymore. You have Elliot.
Henry Thomas played him.
Yeah.
Right?
And
I don't know if he did much else. But.
I don't know, but you have like the older brother. You have so many different like memorable characters in there where they're just, you know, movies have gone on to do that. Like The Goonies takes a lot of steps from E.T. You know, it's not like a direct ripoff in any single way, but you could tell there's, you know, a path there. So
sure.
There's just all these ways it continuously influences film. The magical moment where they bike ride across the moon.
It's an iconic scene. Yeah. It's even in, what's the name of is it Amblin Entertainment that uses that scene as like its logo or whatever? Yeah. That might be Steven Spielberg's production company for all I know. I honestly don't know.
It is.
There you go.
but yeah, and then like we're saying with Stranger Things, it's kind of amazing where the bike scene with E.T. is them flying, and in Stranger Things, the bike scene is flipping a van. But the influence is there, you know, like it's awesome. It's cool that it like influences everything. So
yeah, it is cool. And I don't mean to tease, but folks, at the end of this episode, we're talking a little Stranger Things. So hold on to your hats.
Wow.
Yeah, I know Owen. Speaking of Owen Wilson, actually, I don't have anything with him. It would have been cool if he was in our next movie, but I'll jump to my number 2. I don't think it's on your list. My number 2 is Edge of Tomorrow, a Tommy Cruise specialty. You may also know it by Live, Die, Repeat, or All You Need Is Kill, or any of the terrible multitude of titles that the movie has somehow been known by, and maybe worked to the detriment of the film. But
did you hear that they're making a sequel to this, by the way?
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, it has an even dumber name.
Yeah, it's something like Live, Die, Repeat, or something like that. Live, Die, Repeat again. I don't know. I swear, it's something like that.
What about Live, Die, Rinse, Repeat?
God, I wish.
Yeah. Well, other than the dumb titles, I welcome a sequel because this is just a really good action movie. This is your alien invasion where it's very hostile. And it is pretty heavy sci-fi. Like, a lot of the elements of the aliens are like a hive mind, and they're not like humanoid aliens like you see with like the big buggy black eyes and stuff like those classic drawings. They're very much like a bug-like alien. I feel like that's also a trope. You see that a lot nowadays.
Oh, for sure.
But it's always interesting. I mean, it's alien, so it could, like, aliens could literally come in any form, not even like a spatial form, really. But anyways, Edge of Tomorrow is just Groundhog Day with a lot more guns.
A lot.
It's kind of a hard movie to describe in a vacuum, but basically Tom Cruise is living this day over and over again. And the first half of the movie is borderline comedy because it's like that stretch up from Groundhog Day where he's living the same day over and over again, getting like a little bit further on all of his escapades. And on this, it's just Tom Cruise getting a little bit further on this Normandy like beach invasion. And so, but each time ends with him having this brutal death, basically. And then by the end, he's memorized all these movements and he can get further and further. But it touches a lot on this hive mind and how he can kind of control by going back in time and try and save the whole world. I don't know what the sequel is going to do because to me, it seemed like they wrapped things up pretty well in the first one.
Yeah.
But it's a really good Doug Liman film. Doug Liman did The Bourne Identity. He's also done some duds like Jumper, but he knows science fiction pretty well and he knows action pretty well. And with a good script like they had here and good actors at the lead, this is the kind of movie that can succeed. I mean, beyond just Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt is incredible here. This was kind of her breakout role for me. I'm sure she was in more popular stuff before, but this is the one that put her on my radar because she's excellent. And then I believe Bill Paxton has a role in it.
Yeah.
As the commander or whatever. But it's just a good movie. It's a fun movie. It doesn't take itself too seriously. The sci-fi gets there, but it's not like hard sci-fi like an Interstellar or Contact even. It still kind of keeps everything a little weird so that you don't have to think about it too much. But it's just a good movie.
Emily Blunt caught my eye sometime between Sunshine Cleaning and Looper, but no, she was really cool in this movie. I enjoy Edge of Tomorrow. It's super fun.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's surprisingly not as predictable as you think it would be because, you know, like Alien kind of time play movie, you expect it to kind of hit a bunch of, and it does hit some tropes, but it doesn't fully go where it could go. And for that, it stays in a good spot. Yeah, like it's a good Lyman film. So
yeah, and it's like, to me, it's not an award winner by any means, but it's the kind of movie that I could watch right now and enjoy. Like you can watch it a couple times. I feel like anybody who likes Tom Cruise is going to like this movie. Tom Cruise is almost his own genre, which I love.
Well, it's it goes into what I always say with Tom Cruise, which is when he's playing an a-hole, he is at his best. When he's playing an a-hole, he like learns a lesson, and that's him in this movie.
That's him in almost everything.
You got to cast him as that because he's so good at it.
Like, even I watched Rain Man not that long ago, and I did not like Rain Man that much. I don't think it's aged well, but Tom Cruise plays that character.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no,
Tom Cruise is really almost like an older Miles Teller. I don't think that's an okay thing to say.
I'm neutral on that statement, just for the record.
Yeah, but that's my number 2. You know, underrated part of the movie, the script. Christopher McQuarrie, who directed the newest Mission Impossible, he's done a lot of good writing, and this is one of his good ones.
There you go.
Yeah, Max, about your number 2. We've already talked your number 1. We're almost out of your movies.
Yeah, so this will be my big finale here.
Yeah.
So for the most part, mine have dealt with the brighter side of humanity, even if things get dark in the film. But my next one, my number 2, is The Thing from John Carpenter.
John Carpenter's Thing, 1982's version, right?
Yeah, 1982. The 2011 does have Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but I have not seen it actually.
So honorable mention.
Yeah,
just for that.
If you think I was going to say that one just because of that, you're wrong. But this one has Kurt Russell, which is just as good.
Yeah, I guess.
So if you haven't seen The Thing, it's about a research crew in Antarctica, and they find a neighboring camp that is destroyed, and whatever killed them isn't found, but somehow follows them. And then you have a very creepy run of people getting destroyed, basically. And it's an iconic film, man. The effects are amazing. The story is kind of like how a zombie film, the zombie's the bad guy, but the story is about the humans dealing with each other. That's this, but with like an alien creature, basically. So...
Yeah, I love this film too, and I honestly, when you mentioned it, it was on your list, I forgot about it when I was making mine, because I barely think of it as an alien movie, even though it starts with like the alien UFO crashing. I do think of it as more of like a zombie or a creature feature.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like a monster creature feature, but it's kind of like how what's it called? The one you just mentioned, Edge of Tomorrow, could just as much be a time travel film. It's like that, you know? Yeah, so it's, some of these cross genre, but no, it's just, it builds the creepiness really well. And it's John Carpenter, so, he has a very distinct style.
Yeah, much, a very beloved director, maybe cult following. I don't know which way you'd go to describe it, but this is one of the scariest movies I've seen. I don't love horror. So I avoid most of it, but this one's really terrifying. I think what works to its benefit is the effects. They're good. There's a lot of practical effects, but they do a really good job of some movies like Dungeons and Dragons. When we watch that, like they focus on the effects, and when they age poorly, the movie ages poorly.
Yeah,
this movie does a good job of. You're never like front and center, like staring at this like crazy creature. It does a good job with the camera work and things to draw your eye elsewhere, to keep the effects kind of secondary to the creepiness and to the people. And so the movie ages very well.
Yep. 100%.
Like I bet, and I haven't seen the 2011 thing, but I bet you the 82 thing has aged better than that one.
I will say... With the 2011 one, I've watched some stuff about it, and they did the filmmaker really pushed for practical as well as CG, and so I think they have a mix of it in certain parts, but at the same time, the producers were fighting it, saying let's just do CG, and the filmmakers were like, no, let's do both, and so apparently that's like a big thing about the remake, but when you go and look at like clips from it and you see the heavy use of CG, it just does not look the same. It is just not as good. No matter how you do it. It's just it doesn't compare. So
I mean, look at and I didn't even love Conan the Barbarian, but look at Conan versus the 2011 one with Jason Momoa. That trailer was such a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
And Conan, the original with Schwarzenegger, is honestly pretty restrained.
Oh yeah.
And I already know that it's aged better. That trailer has aged poorly enough. With what was the music in it? It wasn't Evanescence, but it could have been. Like it was something moody like that.
Yeah, it was a little harder than Evanescence, but it's not too different.
No. Yeah, so that's always going to be for me. That's why practical effects I think are so good. It can seem like sometimes it seems like one of those weird pushes when a director pushes practical effects. Like I think. It's a little weird, like how Tarantino is all about like filming and like airing on film instead of digital and stuff. And but there's merit to it when you look at a movie like The Thing, that has aged so well with its effects because it was basically all practical.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I for one, for the big name filmmakers, am a big fan of them using film because they can afford it. I was just using it as an example, but yeah. No, I got you, but I do think there's just something about a nice, creepy horror film that when it's shot on film, it just kind of lends more to it. Just, I think the dark coloration works better on film than in digital at the present moment, but digital is getting better and better. That's just a sidebar. But no, the thing, I mean, it's awesome. I can't get over it. Every time I watch it, the scene where they're doing the blood test, I love that, man. It's just really cool. There's so much good tension building in it because for every jump scare, there's quite a bit in this. There's just as many like tension building scenes where you know shit's going on. You're just waiting for it to happen, and they'll stretch it out too. They'll stretch out that tension, but without it getting like ridiculous. It's just good.
That's why I can barely watch it.
Yeah,
like I can't handle that.
Yeah.
Is it your favorite John Carpenter?
Yeah, definitely my favorite John Carpenter. I just watched Christine in theaters, and that was really fun. And I feel like John Carpenter kind of bounces between fun and frightening. And this one is more frightening than fun, but it's still pretty fun. So
I watched They Live not too long ago, which would qualify as an alien invasion movie, but it was more on the fun side than the frightening. And I honestly didn't enjoy it that much, but that's a weird movie too. It's got this cult following, but it was never a major release. So that's a sidebar, I guess, an honorable mention.
Yeah, no, that's fair, man. That is fair.
But all that's left is my number one.
I wonder what that is.
Do you? Do you think? Well, I told you. So
I know what it is, but I would have known what it is had you not told me.
And it's probably because I talk about it all the time, but it's Arrival. One of my favorite movies from 2016, probably my second favorite movie. I've talked about it quite a bit, and it is the kind of story that if spoiled, you're going to lose. You're going to lose a lot of the impact, so I'm going to try and avoid that. And Max, I know you haven't seen it, but basically, aliens come to / are on Earth, and it's just about how the humans deal with it. It's almost entirely around the human side of the plot. The aliens are barely more than a plot device for the first 2/3 of the movie. It's Denis Villeneuve, who is very, very restrained with showing the aliens. You don't see them for the first 30 to 35 minutes of the movie. And then when you do start seeing them, it's a very slow, unraveling. And even given that, they do still do a good job of making the aliens very alien. Some movies, the aliens will just be like a guy in a suit or a bug type creature. In this, when they board the alien ship, the gravity gets all funky. It's hard to watch at first because of the way the gravity changes in the film, and the shit, the material that the ship made of is weird. It's a really cool way to do it, and it sets the tone for how alien it is. But the main focus of the story is how basically the governments and militaries of the world respond to this. There's a lot of stuff about religion and about politics and coming together versus standing alone. It's hard to talk about while trying to remain totally spoiler free, but it's a very, very good movie. It's paced really well. The cinematography is beautiful, and the music and sound design is really good. I think that's an underrated part of all these alien movies is the sound design, because when you're trying to make something feel foreign on Earth, you kind of have to build that with the sound. That's one of your easy ways to set the tone for kind of that foreign feel. Looking at my list, District 9 does a good job of it. E.T. does a good job of it. Yeah. I can think of some others. But Arrival's another that did a really good job. In fact, I think it won the Oscar for Best Sound Editing. I was really happy to see that it was nominated for, I want to say 8 or 9 Academy Awards, which for a sci-fi film, that's really good. I feel like the Academy doesn't honor genre films that much. But it just kind of goes to show that it's more than just a sci-fi film. It's a really human story. I know you're not a big Jeremy Renner fan, though you're coming around, and I know you're on record saying that.
I'm fine with Jeremy Renner now. He's okay. He's okay. He's just that okay, though. Don't push it.
Well, we can finally have him as a guest then.
Yeah, just call him up.
He's been trying to get on, but I told him I don't think Max is ready.
Hey.
Anyways, Arrival's just a very good movie. It's also got a very satisfying moral quandary. For longtime listeners, you may remember I was talking about Gone Baby Gone on a special a long time ago, and how the ending of that movie brings you this moral dilemma that really helps the movie like have staying power, and Arrival's the same way. If only you didn't have to buy it, if only you could have rented it on Amazon, then we could talk about it with a little more depth. But
yeah.
And that's not on you. That's on
them.
It's on this planet. It's a really good movie, though. So that's where I'll leave it. Someday Max will watch it. I'll bring him the Blu-ray to give him a little more incentive. And then we'll talk about it with spoilers for everyone. But it's my number one, so that should say enough. You know.
I'm with you.
So that's each of our top fives. What a fun discussion.
Yeah, it's cool to see variety.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch Close Encounters. I'm committing to it. By this time next month, by November 30th, I'll have watched it.
Okay, on record.
On record. Do you have any more thoughts on the alien invasion subgenre, I guess, before we move into our next topic of discussion?
I just enjoy it, man. It's fun. We've covered a lot of them on this podcast and just now, and it's always good to see good ones. Less stuff like what was it, Independence Day Resurgence. Don't care about that, but more just the human side, like we said. You have to show both what it does to society as well as the individual, and when you do that, it's good. There's a couple we didn't touch on that we could mention if we wanted to. One of them is Super 8.
Oh yeah, I love Super 8.
I liked it, but
I forgot about it.
It wasn't strong enough to get onto my list.
Yeah, that'd be one of my honorable mentions. Yeah. Edit that back into the start of the episode for me. But, no, Super 8's really good. That's another one that like it's kind of a chip off the Stranger Things block with the kids and.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell they're both influenced by Spielberg in different ways. So,
sure.
But yeah, and that one's J.J. Abrams. Like I said, it's a fun film. It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah,
it's definitely more the human side of things. But it has a fun adventure story in it, less so than like a mass invasion. You know, it's like a group of kids finding an alien, basically. So.
Yeah. We've mentioned Stranger Things a few times. Do you want to start talking about season 2?
Sure.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you guys a 30-second buffer here to turn off the episode if you're not all the way through Stranger Things season 2. So just enjoy the music. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is a totally 100% spoiler cast of Stranger Things Season 2. When this comes out, it's been, a week and a half since it came out. Yeah. So,
and if you're not on your second watching of it, you're just lazy.
You're a fool.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming by now that the internet has fully spoiled it for you if you haven't finished it, so I'm not going to feel bad, people.
Yeah, I was like 1 hour into Friday by the time I saw a spoiler, and I was just like, fuck you, internet.
What was the spoiler, out of curiosity?
It was minor but major at the same time. It was that Barb gets her justice in this season, which was the headline, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
That was an Articles headline?
Yeah, and I unfollowed that producer of Articles, and I left a lot of nasty messages on their walls, both on Twitter and Facebook.
And, we're not even going to dignify them by naming them by name on our prestigious podcast.
No, not at all. But no, that's a big pet peeve of mine when you, like, the weekend of release, at least give us a week, People do that with Game of Thrones, and it drives me crazy. That's why I watch religiously when the episodes come out. So
yeah, you got to watch it right away.
So with Stranger Things now, you have to watch, that weekend.
It's must-watch level. Now, Max, you and I, we are recording here on October 30th at 10:30 at night, which is a late recording.
Mm-hmm.
That's because we both not only had to watch what we thought was the last episode, but then when the season turned out to have 9 episodes, we both had to watch another episode before recording.
Yeah.
So we are both fresh off of it. Max, what's your thoughts? What's the tweet say? What's your Stranger Things Season 2 tweet?
I'll sum up my entire thoughts on this season by saying Karen Wheeler in a bathtub is my new sexual preference.
Wow, that was a...
but no,
I'll gladly pay more per month for Netflix for that.
Yeah, it's a great series. It's a good season follow-up. It's hard to put in. I'm not disappointed in it. I enjoyed it a lot. I felt the end of the season was a lot more emotional than the beginning of the season. While with the first season, it was like emotional from the get-go and had highs and lows throughout it where it was just like punching me nonstop. This one's more like a slow build-up. And once it gets there, it's like amazing. But it took a little bit because, and I was saying this when I first started watching it, when you see season 1, it's a very simple premise to follow. What happened to Will Byers?
Yep.
Where is Will Byers? How do we get him back? Is he still alive?
Kid, by the way.
Crazy?
Poor kid.
Yeah. Kid's having the roughest 2 years of his life. But
puberty's tough on everyone, but man.
Season 2 is like what's happening is something wrong with Will. It's just not as clear in the first like half of the season what's going on. By the time it is clear, it's amazing. It took a little bit to find its feet for me.
And I think a big part of it is because they are differentiating it from the first season. You could have easily had like number 13 or something instead of number 11 come out of the woodwork and be like, okay, what happened to this one?
Yeah.
And then have even more fallout from there. But I feel like they wanted to establish the characters in like growing and changing and change the plot enough. And I liked it. I particularly liked it because, like you said, it does take a little while to fully get in. And so for the first couple episodes aren't that scary. And I liked that. That let me, get back into this world without breaking your armchair.
The first couple are just world building and character building, which was good. No complaints on that. Like I said, I still love the season. Still love the series. I feel the second half is more akin with like a James Cameron punch-up sequel where you come in and just kick the action up into high gear. But the first half definitely took its time establishing storylines and characters, which was good. And I think that it helped the second half be a lot more satisfying. So
one thing I thought was interesting was like in the first season, the main kids there were all they had the initiative, they had the agency for the whole story. And in this one, you kind of have a lot of different plot lines right from the start. Like you have Nancy and Jonathan, you have Nancy and Steve, you have Mad Max and her brother, who I don't remember his name.
Billy.
You have...
let's talk about Billy for a second. Billy is an interesting character.
That's a complex character. They wanted to add characters in, obviously. I mean, any show's going to want to do that. I think some of them were really good. For one, Sean Astin's Bob was amazing.
Amazing. I love Sean Astin.
And Paul Reiser's character, the doctor, was also excellent, I thought.
I liked him. I tend to err on the side of Paul Reiser's a douchebag. That's from a mixture of watching and never enjoying him in Mad About You. And then also he plays a douchebag in Aliens. Okay. And he plays a character that kind of feels similar at first, even though they're vastly different in the two. In Aliens versus this, about like 30 or 40 years has changed that. I guess it's like 30 something years. But he's very slimy in Aliens when you find out more stuff about his character. And in this, he seems like he's going to be that way, but he's really like an inside man who's been helping him and still tries to help him throughout the entire thing. Yeah. And I thought that was a good reveal too, that like it was a slow reveal that he was just on their side, like literally, and actually trying to help them. And they start showing it before the big attack happens, when they're all taken into the facility. Yeah.
And what's funny is he even like it's said to the viewer not right off the bat, but there's one sequence where Nancy and Jonathan purposely get caught by these by the people from the Hawkins lab, and they're brought to Paul Reiser's character, who's running the Hawkins lab now.
Yeah.
And he even says, he's like, the people who are in charge that aren't in charge anymore, I'm in charge here. Like, I'm not as bad as those guys. Like, I'm doing my best to contain this and all this and this. But you even still think he's full slime ball.
Yeah.
And then he turns out to be good, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. The sequence in the, I guess it would be the 6th episode, where they're in the Hawkins lab, and it's locked down, and Bob has to go out and...
So, Bob is, is Joyce Byers' new boyfriend.
Played by Sean Astin.
And much to everyone's disappointment, at first, she's not dating Hopper, but you become cool with it when you realize what, like, a dork Sean Astin's playing. He's just kind of this, like, lovable goof that he legitimately, like, loves Joyce and wants to be a good influence on her kids without being their father, just, like, be a good, positive role model to them. And he, there's so many times in films and TV shows where they take, like, this boyfriend / stepdad type character and make him just like a real doucher, which we see another example of that in here. But no, he's just good, man. And then he gets to play the role of the hero in a way that only Sean Astin can.
And it's very satisfying.
It's satisfying and heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah, because he does perish, unfortunately, but he does get his payoff. Like, I felt like at the start he was just going to be like a dorky foil to Hopper. Yeah. But he becomes like his own character multiple times throughout. Like I loved it when Will is absorbed by the Dark One, or whatever they called the evil being.
The Mind Flayer shadow monster.
Yeah, and they have this weird map that he's drawn. Hopper and Joyce Byers get him to draw this map, and so then when Bob the Brain shows up, Bob shows up with these brain teasers and stuff. He's like, "Oh, these always made me feel better, like getting my mind on something." And she's like, "No, just go, because he's just a dorky guy." And then as he's leaving, he's like, "They don't call me Bob the Brain for nothing." And so she pulls him in, and he solves his puzzle, and it's really fun. It's really good, and what's cool about that sequence is that's like the only time really in the season, and it happens for a full episode after this, but that everybody comes together. So you have Nancy and Jonathan come back to the Hawkins lab. You have all the kids come back, and Steve leading this gaggle of middle schoolers. First on a hunt for demogorgons, or demodogs, excuse me, which was awesome. And then they all end up at the Hawkins lab too. So that's it's almost cathartic to see them all together. I'm always scared when they split the party. So it's nice to see them all together. And then they have a big standoff later on in the season. From that Hawkins lab sequence on, the season was amazing. It never let its foot off the pedal, except for that 7th episode, which it's a episode totally focused on 11, who's the only one separate from everyone at this point. And it wasn't a bad episode by any means, but it's such a change in like the momentum of those last few episodes that I didn't like it that much.
Yeah, I think it doesn't fit in the binging watch. Yeah. It's if you had to watch this week by week, I don't think anyone would even mind that episode. But it kind of sticks out at first because you're like, are you going to cut back to like all these characters I love who are in peril right now? And I think it also kind of hurts that you don't know there's 9 episodes. So you're like, there's one more episode and you're showing me this. That episode ends really strong. But I forgave its sins as soon as I realized I had 2 more hours. I was like, okay, I can deal with this.
I didn't realize that there were 9 episodes until I finished the 8th episode. And the 8th episode ends with 11 busting into the room. She looks like a fucking vampire hunter or something. Yeah. She just tossed a dead demi-dog through the window. And then the episode ends, and I was like, is that how they're ending the season? What the fuck?
Because screw you guys.
And then there's another hour and 10-minute long episode afterwards, so I was really happy.
Yeah.
I personally, I liked the total package of the season a little better. Excuse me. I really, really liked, excluding that 7th episode, like, from when the Hawkins lab gets shut down through the end, I really liked it. I liked that there was action sequences. I liked that there was powerful, tense sequences that weren't action sequences, like the heating up of Will Byers to break the I love that. I thought it was all great from that point forward. And the reason it's so good is because even though those first couple episodes were a little slower, they do the character building so well that by the time you're in the full action, everything the characters are saying. The writing's so good that everything is within character and amazing. Like every character down the stretch is awesome.
Yeah. So there's 2 new characters that we haven't talked about. I mentioned them a second. Well, we've mentioned them, but that's Billy and Mad Max.
Yeah.
Max is kind of a new party member, as they call her, even though they're resistant to it. Cute redhead girl who both Dustin and Lucas both have a thing for. And there's this really fun plot line where they're both kind of competing for her, although Dustin's kind of getting outclassed by Lucas in many ways.
Yeah. They are both still awkward dorks about it, though.
Yeah.
So,
Like Lucas is more sincere, and I think that obviously pays to his advantage, while Dustin goes out and saves a upside down creature, a demo dog.
Pollywog.
Yeah, to try and impress her, and that leads to this whole amazing plotline you mentioned. But then she has this older brother figure named Billy, who is almost like somebody took the DNA of like Jared Leto, Rob Lowe, and Zac Efron, and mixed it together and just bore this like douchebag extraordinaire who can turn on the charm and be amazing when he wants to, but then also can be a complete bastard. And it's just, he's a fun character because you hate him and he doesn't need to be redeemed, but you also understand why he's a bastard because his father's abusive. And
they end up showing it.
Yeah, and he's in this like just messed up situation, and that's why I like the show, because you have this villainous character who is a douchebag. And then in the span of like 3 episodes, you see him get abused, like, charm the pants off an older woman, and then also become the villain once again, and like get his comeuppance, and then also end it on like an okay moment. So it's just, man, it's good TV.
Yeah, it's really good. I did not rewatch the first one. The first one I did find scarier, and maybe it's just because like I was a little prepared that I wasn't such a scaredy pants here, but I watched most of the season by myself, so that's a big win for Scoots.
That is.
But this one felt less horror than the first one, and the first one wasn't even crazy scary in retrospect. But man, I really like what they did with this season. The 11 arc was weird, but it pays off. The only thing I didn't like about it was it's so separate from every other character.
Yeah.
That part of the fun of the season is at any given time, any plot line has multiple very well fleshed out and fun characters interacting throughout the plot lines. And then the 11 stuff, she was on her own. And 11 is a very cool character, but she doesn't have the most characterization by herself. So it's tougher for those scenes to hold up or to be as compelling for me. But it still ends up, the total package ends up working.
Oh, yeah.
I think that 7th episode, that kind of weird one, I think a lot of that may be set up for the larger Stranger Things world. They've already started either filming or just working on season 3, which I get. The kids are young. You got to strike while the iron's young. So they're, you know what? Crank out a couple more seasons. I don't care. The kids probably get paid a good bit of money too, so they don't care.
Yeah. And I like this year apart thing. If they do another year apart, I think that'll be good.
Yeah, and there's the distressing news that Charlie Heaton, the actor who plays Jonathan Byers, was recently arrested on cocaine charges, cocaine possession at an airport, and I don't know what the future holds for him. His star was kind of rising too because he's in New Mutants, right?
Yeah.
The X-Men movie coming up, and I feel like he's got a pretty important character here, and I hope they don't just say like, oh yeah, like Jonathan went off to college and like just write it off at that. But if the actor can't be a part of the filming, I don't know what else he could really do.
I mean, I think they'll just figure out a way to get him in the country.
Yeah, they write things. They're a pretty good writing team here, the Duffer Brothers.
If Charlie Heaton's going to be the only celebrity we don't let do something because he did some coke, like. Yeah,
that's true. I guess people have done worse and been revealed to have done worse recently, and their careers have survived. So
I simply hope he's okay. That he gets cleaned up if he's doing coke. So
yeah, you hear a lot about. I mean, there's famous horror stories of child actors not doing so well as they grow up. So hopefully he does okay.
Yeah, hopefully.
But we'll see. It's kind of funny to think that the first season of Stranger Things was only last year. Like it almost feels like a long time ago. But I'm excited for next October.
Yeah, it's going to be October again?
I would assume. I mean, it's such a home run to have around Halloween in my eyes.
Yeah.
Though I guess the The end of the season ends with like the winter dance and maybe a pseudo Christmas theme. So maybe that would be an interesting take on it.
Season 1 ends with Christmas, I believe.
I can't remember, to be honest.
Season
some Christmas gifts.
And season 1, I think, took place around Thanksgiving, but it wasn't released then. It was released over the summer.
Huh. Well, I know they mentioned in the show that like they're coming up around the year mark for the incident with Will, and the show takes place right after Halloween. So
yeah, which is near Thanksgiving. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, I think it's cool to have it around Halloween.
No, I mean, so, I agree that
next October
that that angle works, like between fall and winter, perfect time period for it. But I just meant like I didn't know if it was going to be released at that.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I think it works for Netflix to release it around Halloween. You know, everyone's kind of thinking scary stuff. You know, so
Netflix, you hear that?
Yeah,
release it then.
Yeah, just get me on the payroll, gang. You got any more thoughts before we sign off?
Nah, man. I enjoyed Stranger Things too. It was good. It was worth the watch. It was worth. Yeah. I did a slower binge, but I still binged it.
Yeah, I did. I actually think this one ended up being a faster binge for me because I couldn't really binge the first season. But this one I ended up I couldn't stop when I got through a few episodes. Like I watched an episode over lunch. I watched. It's good. It's really good.
It's good TV.
Yeah, man. Max, where can the good people find us?
You can find us contacting other worlds using a giant satellite dish and a fire to make smoke signals. Or you can find us at TheCriticalBreakdown.com. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter at BreakdownCast. You can find me using my mind to steal Eggo waffles. Mm-hmm. Or you can find me at Max Rare Film on Twitter.
Sure. You can find me corralling a bunch of 8th graders to light the underground of our home city on fire. Or you can find me at breakdown_Scott on Instagram. Shoot us an email at TheCriticalBreakdownPodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what your thoughts are on Stranger Things 2, or if we forgot one of your favorite alien invasion movies, Our art is done by Josh Rivera.
Our music's done by Jason Brown.
And Wally is the podcast.
Demodog.
Demodog. Nice. And we're the podcast Strangest Things.